In the not too distant past, we made a video detailing 10 of the strangest wrestling video games ever created. Then, a short while later, we made another one. Well, I've got some good news for you WrestleManiacs out there. 2 wasn't enough, so here we are coming in with a TripleJump trilogy. That's right, we've strapped on our luchador masks and dived elbow first into the bizarre world of professional grappling once again. In a world where barely clothed men and women donning masks and face paint and pretending to fight each other is considered completely normal, you really do have to do something special to be considered for a spot on one of our strangest wrestling video games lists.
Yeah.
Off game! The 10 games we're presenting this time all have that little extra something that pushes them over the threshold of strange but normal for wrestling and into the realm of, golly, this is nuts even by our standards. It may be just a little extra sprinkling of weirdness, or perhaps the whole concept reeked of bizarre from the beginning. Either way, we think you'll enjoy this parade of spandex-clad insanity. I'm current Walrus in the Bank briefcase holder Ben from TripleJump, and here are another 10 of the strangest wrestling games. Number 10. Mucha Lucha Mascaritas of the Lost Code. Released for the Game Boy Advance in 2003, this Latin American wrestling-inspired side-scroller is probably most notable for forcing our writer to figure out how to type an upside-down exclamation mark in Microsoft Word. It's Alt and 0161 if you're wondering. Also, it's based on the American animated kids series Mucha Lucha, in which 3 young masked lucha friends struggle through lucha school. Published by Ubisoft, Mucha Lucha Mascaritas of the Lost Code tasks players with stepping into the wrestling boots of their chosen lucha kid and attempting to recover the code of masked wrestling, a very important document and piece of the lucha way of life that's been stolen from the school of lucha. It plays like a side-scrolling beat-em-up, but Streets of Rage this ain't. Frequently popping up on lists of the worst Game Boy Advance games of all time, Mucha Lucha Mascaritas of the Lost Code was derided for its pedestrian pace, boring gameplay, and complete lack of challenge. Reviewers warned that even fans of the show would find nothing to enjoy in this shallow, half-hearted excuse for a beat-em-up, and you can't hide flaws like that even if you do put a mask on it. Definitely not a good lucha thing. Number 9. ECW Anarchy Rules. In case you're not aware, Extreme Championship Wrestling was a promotion that mostly operated in the 90s and was famous for bringing the ultra-violent, ultra-dangerous hardcore wrestling style to the masses. Catapulting the likes of Rob Van Dam and Taz to wrestling superstardom, ECW was eventually bought out, watered down, and disbanded by the WWE. Its name lives on in video game form though, with ECW Anarchy Rules. A sequel to ECW Hardcore Revolution, ECW Anarchy Rules was released on the PlayStation and Dreamcast in 2000. Developers Acclaim aimed to make things more extreme for fans who were disappointed by its predecessor's lack of ECW-esque content, and so this more violent sequel added cage matches, inferno matches, dumpster matches, and more into the mix. One thing that makes this anarchy-filled release stand out, though, is its inclusion of a separate jobber roster. A jobber is a wrestler whose only purpose is to lose spectacularly, making the more prominent wrestlers look stronger, and this game had a whole playable roster dedicated to them. The list included real-life ECW jobbers, Acclaim and ECW staff members, and a few fictional grapplers for good measure. Sounds like a great excuse for multiplayer failure to me. Of course I meant to lose, that's literally my character's job. Please can I have a go on Sabu now? Number 8. Popeye 3 Wrestle Crazy. When Popeye 3 Wrestle Crazy was released for Amiga, Commodore 64, Amstrad CPC, and Spectrum back in 1992, it's safe to say that most real-life wrestlers at the time were fueled by something a bit stronger than spinach. However, that's all our favourite pipe-smoking sailor needs to make his anchor-tattooed muscles pop, and as such, the strapping seafarer was a perfect fit for the wrestling ring. The developers of Popeye 3 Wrestle Crazy clearly didn't think that a Popeye-themed wrestling game was weird enough, however, as they also decided to set the entire thing in space. The titular sailor had been forced into competing in an interstellar wrestling tournament and must beat up and pin aliens, robots, and alien robots before being allowed back home. Oh, and yes, as with all video games with aliens in them from around this time, at least one of them does look very familiar. Don't worry though, as Popeye's allies in the crowd will toss spinach and burgers into the ring to give him a health boost when all that alien grappling gets a bit too much. Turns out that even the galaxy's most hyper-evolved predators can't stand up to good old canned vegetables and junk food, and that's a thought that helps me rest easier at night. Number 7. Super Wrestle Angels. Released in Japan only for the SNES, this all-female wrestling spectacular sees players take on the role of an agent attempting to build a wrestling empire. A text-heavy, menu-driven game, Super Wrestle Angels put players in charge of the minutiae of a wrestling promotion, allowing them to hire and fire their roster, purchase gear, rent arenas, edit training regimes, and more. When it came to the matches, the action played out in a card battling style, with the ring viewed from afar and moves and incidents being shown with impactful, eye-catching illustrations that appeared across the screen. Choose the right card that counters your opponent and your girl will come out on top. Mess up and prepare for a swift kick to the side of the head or some other devastating setback. As with real-life wrestling, random occurrences could severely hamper your promotion's chance of success. Top wrestlers becoming injured or leaving, taking time off for personal reasons, or even being attacked by fans were all possibilities that could ruin your carefully laid out plans. Alas, to really get the most out of what appears to be the football manager of women's wrestling, you have to know Japanese. Still, the matches look cool though. Number 6. Hammerlock Wrestling. Another SNES wrestling escapade, this one actually made it to North America, where it was known as Hammerlock Wrestling. Released by Jaleco in 1994, Hammerlock Wrestling offered a more or less standard wrestling experience for the time, but took some unusual and, some might say, ill-advised steps to try to make it stand out from the crowd. You see, Hammerlock Wrestling attempted to present 16-bit grappling at its most cinematic. It did this by splitting the screen up into 3 horizontal sections, using the upper and lower portions of the screen to portray close-ups of grimacing competitors, crowd shots, and dramatic camera angles as devastating moves connect. This feature was brave, innovative, and visually impressive, but above all else, it was highly distracting. Yes, as a result of 2/3 of the screen being taken up by cinematic asides, the actual gameplay was limited to a very small area of the screen and became hard to follow. This, combined with some clunky controls and a lack of content, made Hammerlock Wrestling an interesting footnote in the annals of wrestling video game history rather than the main event so desperately wanted to be. Turns out people actually want to be able to see what they're doing when playing video games. Who knew? Number 5. King of the Monsters. We've heard big guys in wrestling being referred to as monsters over and over throughout the sport's long and illustrious history, but this arcade and Neo Geo hit took the whole monster thing entirely literally, and we salute it. SNK's King of the Monsters dared to imagine a world where skyscraper-sized lizards, bugs, apes, and aliens could do battle using suplexes, drop kicks, and chokeholds. Unsurprisingly, over-the-top carnage was the result. Gigantic abominations do battle in the cities of Japan, attempting to down their opponents long enough to secure the pin and proceed to the next round. The matches will be interrupted by the human military sending in tanks, attack choppers and the like, but such things are mere distractions to the grappling kaiju, as are roads and buildings that are annihilated in their wake. Blimey, even a Brock Lesnar-Braun Strowman match wouldn't produce this much collateral damage, am I right, wrestling fans? Am I right? Am I? I don't know, let me know in the comments. When a monster does attempt to pin on another monster, the count appears on screen, which leads to a couple of burning questions. Firstly, where is the referee? Secondly, who the heck is the referee that can keep 500-foot monstrosities in check? An idea that could be explored in a modern gritty reboot, perhaps. Number 4. Action Arcade Wrestling. Time for something a bit more recent now, with Action Arcade Wrestling. Looking like your average WWE game given a cel-shaded makeover and channeling Marvel vs. Capcom, this 2019 title was released for multiple formats and presents wrestling with a sprinkling of super-powered special moves. The game boasts over 25 game modes, over 30 playable characters with out-of-this-world powers, and near-limitless customization to try to keep you entertained. The developers attempted to keep things simple, echoing the arcade grapplers of yesteryear with a 2-button control method that renders things like shoulder buttons irrelevant. Having said that, reviewers have pointed out a lack of complexity in content and the fact that the various wrestlers play similarly, so maybe the developers dialed things back a bit too much? Still, the main draw of games like this is always going to be the user-generated content. Such is the wealth of content created by the Action Arcade Wrestling community, players can be absolutely swimming in wrestling icons, indie wrestling darlings, pop culture figures, and whatever disturbing abominations come from the minds of the modding community. Also, there's something to be said for firing lightning at your opponent's face, Raiden style. When all the hip tosses, wrist locks, and arm drags don't quite get the job done, you can probably download him too. Number 3. Retromania Wrestling. Another more recent addition to the Strange Wrestling roster, Retromania Wrestling managed to get some licensed wrestlers involved. Quite the eclectic mix too, with 80s tag team sensations the Road Warriors sharing the same ring with the likes of Zack Sabre Jr. and the Blue Meanie. The game was intended as a tribute to the 2D wrestling games of old and features an eye-catching, nostalgic visual style and grappling gameplay similar to the Fire Pro Wrestling series. The game was released in 2021 on PC and console and includes a story mode in which you play as John Morrison, the man who can't stick with his surname for more than 5 minutes. Here, he's appropriately known as Johnny Retro, and the story allows you to choose who to side with and who to betray as you battle to make Johnny's comeback as successful as possible. As well as the crazy melting pot of wildly different wrestlers from multiple eras and promotions, Retromania Wrestling also has a bit of a fantasy vibe, with venues including War Horse's Hell. This arena is situated in the underworld and features demons and skeletons watching the match while a demonic skeletal band provide blistering musical accompaniment. Also, the crowd barriers are literally just flames, which is a surefire way to stop fan invasions if I ever saw one. No pun intended. Number 2. 64 Ozumo. In sumo wrestling, the aim is to get your opponent out of the ring as quickly as possible. The national sport of Japan, it's strange to think that the most famous sumo wrestler in the West wasn't actually a sumo wrestler at all. Unlike the late great Yokozuna though, the next game on our list never made it to America. 64 Ozumo was released for the Nintendo 64 in 1997 and featured a cutesy graphical style that depicted some of the largest, most frightening men in the world as adorable little 3D models. As in real-world sumo, matches would usually last mere seconds before someone was upended or pushed out of the ring, meaning that exhibition and tournament modes could be blasted through pretty quick if you knew what you were doing. The real man-meat of the game came in the story mode, where players controlled every aspect of the life of their chosen big lad, selecting training habits, keeping tabs on their diet, and even going for a spot of fishing as they rise up the sumo ranks, meeting wacky characters along the way. It's no surprise that 64 Ozumo never made it out west, but it's a neat little curio if very big men in very small pants is your thing. Well, even bigger men in comparatively smaller pants, you know what I mean. Number 1. The Simpsons Wrestling. We had to do it. We couldn't go through 3 whole weird wrestling game videos and not include one of the most bizarre, janky, and uncalled for crossovers in the history of gaming. It's The Simpsons Wrestling. We hope you're happy. America's most famous family have a mixed history when it comes to video game adaptations, from all-time classics like The Simpsons Hit and Run and decently enjoyable adventures like 2007's The Simpsons game, to near unplayable messes like Bart vs. the Space Mutants. They really have run the gamut of gaming quality. Go watch our ranked list on it, we've ranked all of them. Unfortunately, The Simpsons Wrestling famously falls into the latter category and is frequently brought up as one of the worst games of all time. Simplistic, luck-based button-mashing gameplay and horrible presentation combine to make this an experience to avoid, with the dialogue voiced by the series' regular cast being the only aspect of the game deserving of praise.
Watch me closely, Grasshopper, and I will instruct you in the grapplary arts.
The Simpsons Wrestling was an absolute mess, but strangely, it's probably the most well-known of all of the weird wrestling games we've spoken about over this trilogy of videos. If there was such a thing, it would be inducted into the Video Game Wrestling Hall of Fame, just for all of the wrong reasons. So, as a final word of caution, even though some say it's the worst wrestling game of all time, remember that The Simpsons Wrestling is actually just the worst wrestling game of all time so far. I hope that makes you feel better.